This is the Coffee Cup Part 2. The Coffee Cup cometh again. If you didn't catch the first part of this story, either search my channel or click the link in the description box below, and you'll see the first half of the Coffee Cup. Me and my roommates had a really rough night. I shot my cousin in the leg trying to save my friend's life, and of course my own. He was lying on the floor bleeding out, and my other roomie was literally having a nervous breakdown. This was not the worst part. If the police hadn't arrived and busted down the door, we'd probably all be dead. The fabricated story I told them for what happened kept us all from going to prison, but the psychological and emotional damage we endured would stick with us forever. I ended up moving out of the college housing for the Satanic Coffee Cup incident. Keith dropped out of school altogether. He had spent the last couple weeks talking to a counselor about the situation. Like an idiot, he told her what really happened and she had him institutionalized. I hadn't spoken to him for months leading up to that point. We sort of had an argument after. I blamed him for the whole thing. I told him it was his fault for letting that fat cockeyed swamp bitch into our dorm. I felt horrible afterwards and tried calling him a couple times to apologize, but he didn't return my calls. Stacy developed an alcohol addiction to help him forget about it, but I don't think it did much for him. After his leg healed up, he went back to selling drugs till he was able to buy an apartment. He agreed to let me stay. All I had to do was help out with his business. I was going to school part-time and I became a middleman. In other words, I brought Stacy customers. The second week of summer, I was awoken by a knock on a door. Foolishly, I answered it without seeing who was at the door first. I opened up the door to see a man and woman dressed like detectives. My heart skipped a beat. I figured they were there about the drugs. "I'm not letting you in without a warrant," I yelled. This threw them both off because they looked at each other and chuckled. "We're not the police," one of them answered. "We're paranormal investigators." I didn't know exactly how to respond. "May we come in?" Not knowing what to say or do, I let them in. They sat me down and explained everything that happened to us as if they were there. "How the hell could you possibly know all this?" I asked. That's when they told me the news. Nia, the truck driver built bitch who unleashed a demonic coffee cup on us, was wanted for the murders of a couple dozen people across the country. The same coffee cup was found at each scene of each gruesome murder. As crazy as it sounded, I believed it. "Why are we still alive then?" I asked. "How did you even find out who we were and where we lived?" "That's not important," the woman replied. "What's important is that we retrieved the cup after the night it tried to kill you all. We took it back to our base and locked it away. Last night, however, it killed 2 security guards before escaping. We believe it's on its way here to finish off you and your friends." My eyes grew wide as I pictured the coffee cup sitting in the back seat of an Uber on its way to our apartment. "Is there anything we can do?" Before they could answer, Stacy walked in and saw them. He went berserk. "You let the cops into the fucking apartment?" He pulled out his gun and chased them both out. After I explained to his dumbass who they were and what they were doing, I saw the fear in his eyes that was present the night of the attack. "What do you mean the coffee cup is coming?" he asked, and his breathing a little bit heavier. "Stacy, the coffee cup was possessed. We were the only ones who were ever able to get away from it, and now it's free and it's coming for us. The people you chased out weren't police, they were the help." Stacy quickly turned and ran after the investigators, but when he opened the door, Keith was standing there. I walked over and we made eye contact with him. "Can I come in or not?" he asked. We let Keith in and he told us about his time in a mental hospital and how he found God and all this other uninteresting shit. He did tell us, however, about a recurring nightmare involving not one but several coffee cups. The 3 of us were reunited. That day, I took Keith and got some clothes just to help him get on his feet. As we were out standing at the bus stop, I told him how sorry I was for the way I spoke about his dry pig of a girlfriend and that I shouldn't have blamed him for what happened. He understood and it was like our relationship was never tainted. He glanced over to the woman standing next to us to see that she was drinking out of a coffee cup. This made me and Keith very uncomfortable. We both casually took a couple steps away from her, not making it obvious. The bitch smiled and moved closer. "Nice day, isn't it?" she asked in her stupid voice. "What?" I asked her, clearly annoyed. "Are you trying to threaten us, lady?" The woman looked confused. "Get the hell out of here with that cup." She looked at us as if we were crazy and walked away. We arrived home to find Stacy throwing holy water all over the house and hanging up crosses. He had 2 loaded guns near his bedside. I got started on dinner, and for the first time, what feels like forever, we all ate together. We were ready for war, but the first couple nights were uneventful. The third, however, we were all jolted out of our sleep by Stacy's car alarm. He sat up in bed, peeked out of the window, and noticed his front window was busted out. Stacy rushed past me and Keith outside. I got off the couch and followed him out. "Who the hell did this?" I asked, looking around. "I don't know, but somebody's got to get fucked up over this." He turned the alarm off and went back into the house. "Should I call the cops?" Keith asked. Stacy looked at him as if he asked for some ass. "Hell no, cops are not allowed at my house, ever." Keith sat down on a couch and wiped his face. I looked around and noticed the neighbors were turning their lights on. This was comforting, to say the least. Kate, the really nice neighbor, walked outside and approached me. "Is everything all right?" she asked, in a concerned tone. "Yeah," I answered. "I think it's just some kids screwing around." We chatted for a minute before she went back into home and before we made our way back to the apartment. Stacy literally just went back to sleep. I guess there wasn't much he could do since he wouldn't call the police. Keith was dozing back off and laid back down in my bed. A bit paranoid, but didn't stop me from drifting off. Not an hour would pass before I was woken up again by the sound of a creaking door. It was dark in my room, but there was just enough visibility for me to see the goddamn coffee cup on my chest. I was overwhelmed with fear. I couldn't move yet. I was trembling. A single tear dropped from my eyes as I slowly reached for the holy water at my bedside. The weight of the cup suddenly became heavier to the point I was struggling to breathe. The coffee cup was trying to suffocate me. I was out of options. I couldn't yell, and the oxygen wasn't coming fast enough. Someone got up to use the bathroom, which must have caught the cup's attention, causing it to ease off me. That's when I smacked the shit out of it, and went all the way with all my strength, jumped out of bed, grabbing the holy water. I ran out of the room and called out to my roommates. Guys, the coffee cup is here. Keith jumped off the couch and grabbed a baseball bat in the corner, calling out Jesus' name. What happened? Stacy called out from the bathroom. The coffee cup is in the house, I answered. You need to get your ass out here now. I got close to the bathroom door, and that's when it hit me. Stacy had Mexican food before he went to bed that night and was taking the most repugnant shit. I guess he reached for the toilet paper and grabbed a handful of the coffee cup because he ran out of the bathroom screaming and grabbed his gun. When he turned around, the cup was too close. Stacy was thrown through the window. Me and Keith found ourselves in a similar situation, but this time we weren't going out like bitches. Suddenly, the cup flew across the apartment and hit Keith in the head, knocking him out. Now it was just me and the cup. You stay the hell away from my friends, I yelled as I picked up the baseball bat in a final face-off. The cup lunged at me and swung. I swung as hard as I could and knocked off its handle. The cup hit the ground and started rolling. I chased it around the house, trying to shatter it with the bat, but I tripped and fell. It mounted me and started suffocating me again. Keith got to his feet and came and got it off of me. I caught Keith as he breathed and scuffled with the coffee cup, the cup quickly gaining the upper hand. In a moment of desperation, Keith tossed the demon across the kitchen. The cup cracked. At this point, I had lost most of its power, allowing us to get out of the house. Stacy had finally made it to his feet. The coffee cup was pissed. It was destroying our apartment. A fire was set inside. We have to go, I said, grabbing Stacy's shirt. I had to pull him towards the car. Come on, let's go, I said. He looked at me and yelled, with what fucking keys? That's when I noticed. We looked back at the apartment. The coffee cup was in the window, holding the keys, taunting us. All of our neighbors left their homes. There was no one now but a crowd outside, by which time the apartment was on fire. Loud demonic laughter was heard coming from the inside before the entire apartment exploded. Good news was that this nightmare was finally over, at least for the time being, and enough people had witnessed what happened that we wouldn't get in any trouble with the law or be labeled as nut jobs. It was still pretty rough for Stacy. He really did love his apartment. It was the first place of his own he had ever had. We had enough money saved up to get on our feet fairly fast. It had been 2 years since all this went down, and it seemed like things would remain normal. Stacy got out of the streets and wrote a book about the experience. Of course, he over-exaggerated the story, which is amazing considering the extremity of the actual occurrence. We were all semi-famous, but Stacy was a star. One day he invited us to attend a book signing. It was dreadfully boring until we got to the very last person in line. It was that big forehead skunk ape, Nia. She didn't say a word. She just sat down on the table and walked away. Me and Stacy ran after her, but as soon as we turned the corner, she was gone. We went back inside and saw Keith unwrapping a box she left. Inside was a soda can.